Good morning, good morning. Welcome to the training this morning. You'll have to bear with me, y'all. Those of you who are in the room, feel free to say hello in the chat, I think. Are they able to at least chat with me?
Yes, they are.
Okay, good. So just some quick information. Hello, Julie. Thank you for the hello. I cannot see you on my screen, y'all. So if you're waving and doing those types of things, I can't see that. I can see you in the chat, however. So if you want to say anything you want to say in the chat, that would be fabulous. And welcome, obviously welcome. There's also a little Q&A button down there at the bottom if you want to click on that and provide questions in that little space. That would be awesome as well. Okay, so you're all here for Adobe Premiere Pro Basics, and it is going to be basic. We're going to start from the beginning. So the first thing I want to do though is for those of you who are on this Zoom this morning, if you would go ahead and just kind of give me a rating on your knowledge about Adobe Premiere Pro right now. And I'm going to do a 1 to 5, 1 being you have very little, like maybe you have gone to the point of doing a trial version so you could take a look at it and you kind of looked around but got too confused and just dropped out, or a 5 if you happen to be someone who has used the program, you know some of the basics, but you feel like there's some other things that you want to learn. So if you could just throw your number up in the chat for me. 0 works. Thanks, Jen. Julie's at a 2. Tom Becca. Well, hello, Tom Becca. Tom Becca's at a 4. Anybody else? We have more 0s, 1s. We have Roy Sabio at a 4. All right. So some of you folks at 4s, I want you to think about what had you put yourself in this course specifically. And I don't want you to get bored. So that's why I'm asking the question. My hope is that I can continue on with some of this training and be able to move to some more advanced things that are happening within Premiere. So again, I don't want you, Roy, or Tom to get bored with too much of the basic things that are happening here. So if you could kind of give me some idea in the Q&A or in the chat as to what had you join this training, that would be awesome. So we do have a lot of 0s, 1s, and 2s. Anybody else? I know that there are 19 folks in the room. That might include myself and the DoSpace moderator. So we might have 17 other folks in the room, and not everyone has responded, and it's okay. There's no need to. All right, is that Zabe? Is that how you pronounce your name? Or Zabe? Zabe, okay, great. Zabe is at a 3. Again, for those of you that are in that 3, 4, 5 zone and you have some knowledge and you've done some work, if you can let me know what it is that you're hoping to achieve by putting yourself in this training today, that would be awesome. Because I am going to start with the basics. All right, anybody else want to chime in real quick with where they're at on that 1 to 5 level or 0 to 5 level? 0 meaning you have absolutely no clue about Premiere and you want more information and you're not sure where to start. That would probably be the 0. Tom, I probably won't cover them in depth. I will let you know that they're there and how to kind of sort of get there. Okay, Roy, gotcha. Looking for a refresh on knowledge about Premiere. Perfect. And Tom, also, when you say special effects, I'm assuming you're talking about the text effects and whatnot that are like pre-set up graphics that you can actually alter. Is that what you're talking about, Tom? Okay. I'll kind of go there. I won't get too in depth, but I will go there a little bit just for you. How's that sound? All right, folks. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here to get started. Again, feel free to throw some things in the chat or in the Q&A. I do have those things open. Don't do anything for you. It's all right. I'm all right with that. All right, we're up to 23 participants. So for those of you who are joining a little late, I did ask a question here in the beginning on kind of knowledge level, from 0, meaning you have no knowledge about Premiere Pro whatsoever, and you join this training today because you really want to know how to get started. You know, 1 is maybe you've already opened the platform, you have it, you've started to kind of play around, but you have questions about how things work, all the way up to 5, which is you're knowledgeable, you've used it, and you just maybe want a refresher. Like we have a couple folks who joined. Roy said that he is looking for just a refresher. Kiara, I am not sure about e-certification. I personally am not providing that. I'm not sure in regard to DoSpace if they provide something. And we have someone who says, will you cover how to change and improve the colors from diving video? Okay. Puvendran, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay, so DoSpace is saying, hello, we do not give out certifications after our webinars. However, if you need proof that you attended, we can email proof of attendance. If you would like us to do this, you can email us at programs@dospace.org. So for anyone who's looking for just that, yes, you were in this training and you want to be able to prove that, certainly you can do that. All right. Puvendran, what I'll probably do in regard to improving colors, we can touch on that a little bit, but again, it's this is really a basic course. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started so y'all can see kind of where we're going here. I'm going to share my screen. So first of all, I wanted to show you, once you set yourself up for the Adobe CC platform. Now, I have everything. So I have a full access. I pay the monthly fee to just have access to all of the different things that are available through the Adobe CC. Main reason for that for me is because I do use a lot of these platforms, Photoshop, Illustrator. I sometimes use Lightroom, but not as much as Photoshop. Premiere Pro and After Effects are 2 things that I use predominantly within my work. I do work at Bellevue University. I'm a senior video producer director there. And those are things that I use predominantly within my work. I've touched on some of these other things, use Media Encoder a lot. And we'll kind of touch on that a little bit later here in the training. So I wanted to show you that, so that, because once you do decide that you want to maybe purchase a monthly subscription, because that's the new thing, Adobe CC now has monthly subscriptions, and you'll want to find the one that works for you. The one that works for me is having it all, because I just don't know when I'm going to need to use some of these other platforms. So I just pay the rate to have it all. If you do happen to work for an institution, for example, if you work for a university, or even if you're a teacher, for example, you can actually get the student teacher rate, which is a significant savings. And I actually work at Bellevue University, so I'm able to use this at a discounted rate, and I get it for a lower rate than the normal. So, okay, so now I am going to switch to this. I'm going to show you my whole desktop here. And the reason why I want to do this is because when you go to launch the program, so for example, I'm just going to go right to Premiere Pro and open it. This is the page that's going to come up initially when you go to open Premiere Pro. okay? So it gives you these options. You can do a new project, you can open an existing project. It's going to show recent projects. So you can see here that I have a whole variety of different projects that I've already worked on that are linked here. They offer some awesome tutorials, so you can start a tutorial right away and kind of go through a tutorial, which Tom, that might be something if you've already got access to the platform, you could go in and kind of look through the different tutorials that are available and maybe find one that specifically speaks to using some of those already pre-created graphics that they have within the program. Now, the first thing that you're going to do when you go in here is you're going to click New Project. And then it brings up this New Project window. I'm going to close that out. Now, this is really important. Now, there are some things on here that are not as important anymore because of so many things that have gone digital. But if you do still shoot in a platform that is that you need to connect via FireWire or some other way to import your footage, that is still available. But for purposes of this training, I'm going to name my project Do Space Training. You always want to go through this when you set up anything that you're editing within Premiere Pro. The reason why is because if you don't, as you notice here where it says volumes, Armor ADT, Noodle Tools, that was the last thing that I worked on. If I don't change this location, anything that I do on this project for Do Space is going to show up in the folders for Noodle Tools. And you don't want that to happen because, or whatever other project you were working on, because there are certain, there's cache and media that's going to happen within the program, and it's going to create folders for your project so that all of those things are in the same place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse and I'm going to hit this external, and I'm going to call this Do Space. These are just all things. So I created this new folder for this project. And these are all things that you want to do even before you get to editing within the platform. But these are quick. If you do these, every time you do it, it's quick and easy. In regard to this, I don't really change any of these things because they're actually connected to what I'm importing if I'm actually importing things from, say, for example, an older camera that doesn't have digital cards that come in and out of it. You do want to click on scratch disks because right now, anything that's related to this project is, because I changed this to the Do Space folder, it's going to go same as project. So that's going to be automatic for you, but I would always check it. So any video that I might capture or import, any audio, video previews, audio previews, an auto save, that's something that's really important. We'll touch on that shortly. Any of your libraries or downloads, everything's going to go into this folder, okay? And then ingest settings are actually if I'm pulling something in from external media that doesn't have a card, because that's a whole completely different thing there. Okay, so now I'm going to click OK, which is going to launch the program for me, but I'm going to minimize this for a second, and I want to show y'all. And again, if you have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, although I'm going to need to make that show up at some point here. Where's the chat? All right, there it is. Sorry about that. Okay, so I do have my chat open, so if you do have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. I do have the Do Space panelist here with me, and she'll give me a heads up if I miss anything, but if you do have questions as we go along, please feel free to ask. Okay, so I've opened this project, but I'm going to minimize this for a minute because I'm going to go to the hard drive where I've saved that, and y'all can see this hard drive here, correct? Let me know if you are not seeing what I'm sharing, although you should be, because I'm sharing my whole screen. So here's the folder I created. Now, when I open this folder, there's already these 2 folders within that folder. This is the reason why you want to be sure and create those from the beginning, because anything that's associated with this project is going to go in the folder that you created, and Adobe is going to automatically create folders. Now, I'm using an external hard drive just because that's just part of how I do my work. We save a lot to hard drives because once those hard drives are kind of full, we set them aside, and then I can always go and revisit a project, and that can be saved, and it's not taking up space on my actual hard drive. Now, a couple of other things that I also create within this folder before I even get started is I create a graphics folder. So if I go and create something in Photoshop, for example, I'm going to save it here within my graphics folder so that when I do have to revisit this, everything's being saved in the same place. If I don't save it in the same place, I'm going to lose something. Okay. I also create a music VO voiceover folder, and that is, I have access to music tracks that I can use, and we actually pay for those. There's a whole variety of those that are out there. Adobe actually now offers some of that. Shutterstock has music beds. Storyblocks is another great place to find music beds, and they have monthly subscriptions as well. The other folder that I create is what I call a B-roll folder. Puvendran, basically all I did was go to the hard drive where I know that I created the folder, which is my Armor ADT hard drive, and that's an external hard drive that I have connected to my Mac. And then I go to my DoSpace folder that I created when I opened Premiere Pro, okay? So see, I called it DoSpace Training, and that's actually what's open right now over in Premiere. We just haven't gotten to the point yet where we're importing any of our resources. But I'm actually telling you how to build this folders within that folder so that everything that you're using for this project is in this folder. So if you offboard it, say for example, you create this on your hard drive and you then offload it later onto an external hard drive to free up space on your hard drive. It's actually not really direct within Explorer and Mac. That is something that I created that when I created my project here. Okay, good. You're with us. Good. All right. So, and these are all folders that I'm creating within that folder when I first opened up Premiere. And then I went out of Premiere and opened this folder that I created when I created my project. And I'm creating these folders within here because if I don't do that and I just go open Photoshop, for example, and I do something within Photoshop and create a graphic or something or a text overlay or anything that I might do within Photoshop to import into this program, if I save that someplace else, then when I go to offload this project from my Mac hard drive to an external hard drive, if that's the way I set it up, I'm going to lose connections with those pieces. So I'm basically starting from the beginning to show you that you want to create these folders. You want to create that original folder and then create these folders within those folders so that you can find stuff. And when you offload it off your hard drive, it's going to take everything with it. It's kind of keeping you organized, for example. Okay, so B-roll footage is basically any footage that I might get from a stock footage platform. Maybe if you're shooting with your iPhone, you shoot some sort of an outdoor scene and you pull it off of your iPhone and then you move it into this B-roll footage because maybe you're going to use that footage to cover something else. That's what basically in news media, they call it B-roll, because you're using the video, you're not necessarily using the audio, okay? The other thing that I put on here is final video. And these are all just, I do this just, you know, just becomes kind of a routine to get into so that when I'm creating or editing something, I have all these folders already created. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, so everybody can see this Premiere layout here. So when you first open Premiere, this is what you're going to see. This is just basically a blank project, okay? One of the things that Tom was referring to here is these video effects. And there are video effects, there are graphics, essential graphics that are pre-built graphics over here within templates, where you can create something you can just change what they've created in that template to match with what you want. So that's basically what he was talking about. There's different sound effects and stuff that are built within the platform. There's color, being able to change colors. That was something that was also brought up by, I believe, Zaid. So the program itself is incredibly powerful. There's a lot of different things that will make your editing a lot easier. And again, trust yourself. As you're going along, you will, you know, add more learning on top of more learning. But I think, do we all understand setting up what we want to do to make sure that we're doing that same thing every time we set up a project? Does anybody have a question about that? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So, all right. So I'm just going to break down here for you what we have within this panel. Okay. Down here in the bottom left-hand corner, this is my project panel. So this is where I'm going to start to import media into my project. Now, for example, right now, you know that I've created those folders that are out there, but there's nothing in those folders. There's two ways to access those folders though. You can either double click in this space. So right here in my project space, when I open that up, it's going to automatically go to the folder that I created for this project. Okay. And here's all those other folders within those folders. Now, when I go to click on these, there's nothing in them right now, right? And that's okay, because this is where you're going to actually add different pieces for your project, right? So and once those are there, I can actually click on a folder and import that entire folder and its contents. And it's not going to do that because that folder is empty. Anyway, that's basically how you're going to get to importing things within your project, okay? But you want to build those folders so that they exist. Now I'm going to show you an example of the difference there. So I'm going to go to, now Storyblocks again is a completely separate standalone space where you can go and you can get B-roll footage, stock footage that's created. And again, there's all kinds of different programs out there that offer these things. So I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to download this piece of stock footage. Okay. So now this is downloaded. Now this is going to be in my download folder. See, so there it is in my download folder. But I want to go back to my do space pre-pro basics in my B-roll folder. And now I'm going to take this and drag it and drop it into this B-roll folder that I created, right? Now, when I go to double click on import media, there's that media. Is everybody following along with that right now? So I just went ahead and double clicked on the media, which then imported it into my project, right? There's a variety of different ways that you can import media into your project. I'm just giving you the way that I use it because it helps to keep me organized. And if you don't stay organized and you go and spend 3, 4, 5 hours working on a project, but you've been downloading your B-roll footage to your downloads folder and you've connected everything through that, you're going to lose it, right? So I'm going to show you an example of what it looks like to lose that. I'm actually going to delete, oops. So I'm going to delete that piece that I just imported. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to empty the trash. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. Once you do that, you're going to get this. It's going to tell you that you have missing media. Now, I don't want to go connect that media to the downloads folder, because if I do that and then delete it from the downloads folder or move this project offline to back it up to a hard drive, I'm going to lose that connection to that media. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cancel that. Now I didn't delete it from the downloads folder. Here's my downloads folder. And I'm telling you, an hour is not enough to do basics. So, all right. So I'm going to go back to this and I'm going to go back to my B-roll and I'm going to drag this and drop it in here again. So now there it is, right? Now I'm going to come back here and I'm going to right click on that media and I'm going to do link media. And I'm going to locate that media and see, it's already showing me that in the do space B-roll folder, it's there. See this? So it actually went ahead and just reconnected it once I put it back in there. But again, you want to set your project up so that you're building it and you've got everything going to one place. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I actually did have a project that I spent a long time ago when I was first using Premiere Pro, spent hours and hours and hours, but I was saving things to all kinds of different folders on my hard drive. When I offloaded that project, and I'm talking about hours and hours, when I brought it back on to fix something and tweak it, it was all my media was disconnected. So that's clue number one, important to understand. Okay, we all there? Any questions about that? Any questions that might help you if you've already been within the platform and have gotten to this point and are confused? Anything you want to share? No questions, Jen? Okay. Now there's a couple different ways to go about starting to lay your project out. And I'm just going to take this piece of media and I'm going to drag and drop it over onto this empty timeline. Okay. It's automatically going to create my timeline. It's going to name it that piece of footage that I had there. And here it is now over here in my editing space. Okay. And I can hit play and it's going to show this video. Now it's going to be choppy. And the reason why it's going to be choppy is because this little line up here is yellow. It hasn't necessarily rendered the video itself within the platform. And that's fine. You don't necessarily have to render it in order to go in here and edit and create something. Okay. So this is our basics. Now, I'm going to start here by looking at some of these different tools over here. Okay. All of these different tools are going to do something a little bit different for you. Will we receive a transcript or copy of this presentation for referencing later? Do Space, my lovely Do Space panelist, do you have any? I don't know if they're actually even recording this, if I'm being honest.
So yes, we're recording the presentation and we're going to post it to the Do Space YouTube page.
There you go, Julie. Okay, and again, I mean, there's so much to learn about this platform. I'm trying to give you some easy access points to go ahead and like get in there and get going. And this is one of them. This is the quickest way to get going. Now, what's really cool about using some of these video platforms where you can download B-roll footage is sometimes they offer a variety of different angles of the same shot. And so I'm basically going to go in here and I'm going to go ahead and download this other shot. And now remember, every time I download something though, I got to make sure I'm putting it in my folder that is connected to this project that I'm working on, okay? So I'm going to show you that. We're going to pull in this second clip. Now, there's two different ways. And again, this is all kind of playing. You play with the program and you make it work the way you need it to work. Everybody kind of has their own way of making the program work the way they want it to. So as you're playing, you'll figure out what your best practices are going to be. Okay. So to layer your footage is super duper easy. So here she's getting herself together. Okay, see how we have a tight shot, and I'm going to go back. Now her hands are in a different place. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to move it to match it up a little bit here. She does move her hands kind of, not exactly, but there are ways around that. So I can take this piece of footage. Okay, there's a little bit of a jump cut there, but it's all good. Because what I can do, so the thing about this program that's really, really awesome compared to say iMovie, you can layer things, but it doesn't allow you to get in there and really kind of edit things together and make them work the way you want them to work, okay? What's great about this program is I can, because I can actually move this down and then I can go up in here into our effects and I can go into my video effects. Now again, you know, there's nothing you can do to actually break the program. So a lot of the ways in which I learned the program were just literally going in here and spending the time to kind of play around with different things and, you know, putting them together and seeing how they shake out in the end, right? So I'm going to go in here. We have our video transitions, and these are really great because now I've got this jump cut, right? Because her hands weren't quite in the same place, close, but there's a little bit of a jump. But if I do this film dissolve between those two places and I just drop it in there, super easy, and see how that now creates a transition that's not a jump. So it actually looks like those two clips kind of happened at the same time from two different camera angles, which they actually didn't. And we know that because there was a jump in there. But that will give you that smooth transition from one scene to the next. Now, we probably would need to, yeah. So that's a little funky. So we might take and move that a little bit there so that it looks a little bit more like those two things belong together. See? Okay, so that kind of that gets you going. That gets you started and being able to kind of lay out what it is that you want to do here. Any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of other things in regard to these different windows. So this window over here right now is showing the source clip, which is this clip. Okay, you can actually go in each of these clips individually. If you double click on it, it brings it up into this window and I can click effects. There's a variety of different things that you can actually do right here. So I can change it. So what the scale is, I can change the position. So I can move that around within that window. I can rotate it. Okay, all within that window. I can change where the anchor point is, and that anchor point is this piece, right? Now, the anchor point itself is basically, if I move that anchor point and I go back to rotation, see how that changes where it's actually going to rotate. That's what your anchor point is all about. So I can move that around and put it wherever I want. If I am doing, say, a rotation or a zoom, I can leave it in the center. But basically, this program is so powerful because you can tweak things like in all kinds of different ways. Obviously, if I'm going to do a rotation within this, right, I want to not have these black spaces show up. So I might want to zoom into a certain area so that when it rotates, I'm not seeing that black space from behind. But are we all kind of, are we getting the idea of how easy it is to get in here and just boom, get going? Any questions? We've lost a few participants, but that's okay. Thanks, Julie. Julie says, awesome. Yes, it is very awesome. Okay, layers. Not sure how you did that. Jen? Okay. So that's a good point. We have layers here within the video panel for video, right? And we have layers for audio. Now, what I did here, okay, is I layered these two things. And before I had the video of what was below there, you could see that, but that's not what would come up because when I play this, it's going to automatically jump from one scene to the next scene. Okay, because it's layered one on top of the other. But in order to add this film dissolve effect, I have to use my cut tool over here. So my razor tool, the razor tool actually allows me to place a cut. So see, I can cut that and I can then delete that if I want to delete that, but I don't want to delete that there. But that's what I did here. Does that make sense, Jen? So that I could drop this down and I could then add my dissolve, right? Once I figured out where I wanted to tweak, where the one video was going to transition to the next video. The other thing about your transitions is you can actually pull it up and you can change the duration of a transition as well. Now, all of these are frames, and this is actually a second, so 1 second and 7 frames. Within video editing, we have different frame rates. And again, you don't have to understand any of this to really start doing any editing. And so I think this is where this platform can be really confusing for people. And they're like, you know what, I don't understand it, so I'm just not even going to try. But the truth is I encourage you to go ahead and try. So I'm going to show you when we go over here to our panel. So does everybody remember I went and just dropped this chunk of video, the first chunk, this chunk, into the timeline, and it automatically created a timeline for me so that I could get up and going and editing. Now, within this, we have our settings for this particular timeline. And that's not it. So I'm going to click on this, but I'm going to go to sequence settings because this is my sequence, right? And here's the other thing. You also want to get into the habit of changing or renaming your sequences. Okay, so I'm going to call this Yoga Open, right? So now I've changed the name of this sequence, and I'm going to go up here to my sequence settings. Now, this says custom. If I have a sequence of videos in a timeline, why do I need to use another layer? Those additional layers could be to add text on top of. So you could add a piece of text on top of. I know that Premiere Pro now actually offers your text to then be built within one layer. You could, for example, I do a lot of editing. I start out in Premiere Pro and then take it over into After Effects because I actually like the ways in which I can use some of their transitions and whatnot. I have a little bit more ability to make something look 3D, to make something look like it's in front of something else. The other thing you can do with layers is, for example, let's say I didn't want to drag this down into here, but I wanted to put some sort of text on top of this part of the scene. But I want to create all of that in one piece. Again, we're kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but again, these are basic. I hope that makes sense, Pavendran. For simple jump cuts, the other thing you can do is this. I'll show you. Will help make a little bit of sense. So there's another way to build a transition. If I'm, say, just doing a cross dissolve, I can take this up above here, right? This is another reason why you might want a layer or you might not. I can change the opacity, right? And I can go to the front of this and I can do this. And so I can create a transition that way as well. Now that happened pretty quickly, which is totally fine. Again, it's just a matter of what way works best for you. You may want to also create text on top of just that one layer and you want it all to crossfade together. And so you can actually layer this text on top of this piece, and then you can adjust it to create a separate sequence from just that one layer. But that's a little bit more advanced because you can make subsequences within all of this so that you can actually go to one part. Like as you're building something along a timeline, you know, if you wanted to build something just above this section, and so you're layering a couple of different things within just this section, you would want to make a subsequence so that when you add your transitions, all of those things that are layered on top of that one section get all compressed together in that one section. And then when you assign a transition, you can assign that transition for just that one section, but you wouldn't have to do each individual layer. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, Pavendran. Okay. So basically that's basically what that is. And again, it's a matter of deciding what is your best practice in regard to how you want to edit. So I'm just going to change this just a little bit so we can actually see that transition a little clearer. Yeah, again, this was a really super basic, how can we jump in and get started, and to do that in an hour, isn't always that easy, especially for folks who join who are a little bit more advanced within the program than others. But this would allow me to layer multiple items within here. So let's say I wanted to layer, I'm just going to pull in a random piece of video footage from something else, and I'm going to layer in that. Just to give you an idea of what Pavendran is kind of pointing to. Where did my, oh, here it is. Okay. All right, so I'm just grabbing a random piece of footage, okay? And I actually want this piece of footage, a little section of this piece of footage, to show up. So I'm just grabbing the video portion of it, and I'm going to lay it here just to give you an idea in regard to layers. Okay, so I dropped it there and I double clicked on it, which then opens it up in this panel up here in the upper left. And then I can change my effects, right? This is where we have done, and again, this is obviously not something that has anything to do with this particular yoga video. But maybe I created a graphic and I bring that graphic in and I want to layer it over this particular section of the video. And I want this to happen all at the same time here. I'm actually going to delete that, what I did there. This is an example of layering, and again, the power of the program itself. So now these things are going to happen at the same time, but I don't want to have to go in here and add a transition on both this graphic layer and the yoga layer. So I'm going to create a subsequence. And it did not do what it's supposed to do. I apologize. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. So it did create, oh. I'm going to group it. My apologies. If I group this, then anything I do to that layer is going to happen for both layers. Why in the world? Okay, there's the subsequence. My apologies. Okay. What it used to do is collapse those two layers into one, but I can delete that from there now, and I move it up here. Oops, it actually didn't do that in the way it normally does. Nope, okay. I'm not gonna go there because I don't want to confuse folks. That's later down. Apologize. Okay, basically all I did was undo. If we go to undo, which is a Control Z, I can actually undo all the way back to a certain point, and then I can click and save. So it took out all of that other stuff that I did. Notice how all of those additional layers that I had created, it all disappeared. But again, that's kind of a more advanced piece, but this is going to get you started within the program and learning how to just go ahead and use your basic transitions. When you're creating a video and you're wanting to do something in sequence as you're shooting things on your phone, for example, you want to shoot them in a certain sequence, but this helps you cover. If you only have one phone and you have to move that one phone around, you'd have to reshoot the same thing over and over and over again, but it would allow you to go ahead and make these kinds of transitions when you get into the editing aspect. Does that make sense, folks? Okay, so there's all kinds of other little things that you can do to tweak within the program. You can go in here. Scopes are something that are used for if you're going to take what you're editing and you're going to have it air on television, for example. You don't even necessarily need to worry about these at all if you're doing something digitally, right? If you're just doing something that's going to end up online. You can go in here and you can edit audio if you have audio that you bring into this program. Now, granted, this clip came with audio. It says it has audio, but it actually didn't. When I drop this down on this layer and I expand the audio section, there is no audio there because you can't see a waveform. Julie, that was an excellent question. I didn't even see your question and I started talking about audio. So let's say you shot this yourself and there's audio that's happening within the video, then you would see a waveform. And let me show you an example of what that waveform would look like. And again, I'm pulling something from another project. And since this project is not connected to that project, I'm not going to pull it into my folder. However, if it was, I would want to make sure that I put it in the folder that I created on my hard drive for this project, okay? But here's what a waveform looks like, right? So that's the difference of whether or not there's audio connected to the video. Does that make sense for you, Julie? When you create your first project, you're going to automatically have 3 layers of video and 3 layers of audio that start from that very beginning. So let me show you here. You can actually come down here and create a new sequence. Remember, I told you there were 2 different ways to create a sequence within the timeline. The initial one is so that I don't want you to get stuck in the weeds on how to make sure, like, what's my frame rate? What's my, what kind of video footage do I have? You know, like, you are going to need to worry about that if you're pulling from multiple resources. But let's say, for example, everything that you're going to import into a project, you shot from your cell phone. You shouldn't have to worry about any of those types of things, as long as when you set your cell phone up to capture video, you have it captured in a frame rate that works for this platform. And again, that can be so confusing, but here's kind of a quick once over in regard to that. I can actually go in here and I can create a sequence from scratch. And there are all these different presets, right, that we can use. And within those presets, there's all these settings for what editing mode, for the frame rate, right, your time base, your frame size, square pixels. A lot of these things you don't need to understand if you're going, say, direct to a web platform and you're not looking at having this show up on television, if that makes sense. And you can create, like I created this custom setting, which is what I edit. Pretty much everything that I edit for Bellevue, I'm using this custom setting when I create those things, so that I only have to worry about making those changes later. Now, as you notice here, the frame rate or the frame size is 1280 by 720. Most of us are somewhat familiar with what that means because of televisions, for example. We have 1080p, we have 720p. It's all a size thing, right? So I'm actually going to leave this all the same, DSLR 2997 frame rate, but I'm going to show you an example of what that means when we're talking about the video frame size. So I'm going to leave all of these things just like that. It creates a new sequence. Again, you want to get into the habit of renaming your sequences to help keep things in order, right? I'm going to call this Yoga Open 2. Now, notice what happens when I drag a piece of that footage into this. It's going to give me this little clip mismatch warning. Now, the reason why I'm getting this warning is because I know that this video clip is actually 1080p. It's larger than what I just created, which is 720. I'm going to say keep existing settings because I want to keep that setting as 720, and I know that the video is larger. Now, the reason why I did that is because now look, for example, when I take this and I click here and I go to my control panel and I rotate it, see how when it rotates, I'm not necessarily getting all that black that I got before, because basically what it did is it zoomed up that piece of video and it gives me the ability then to move back, right? Or to actually move this within the screen and it still fills my screen, but maybe it gives me a little bit more room to add text over here, right? Is that making sense? Anybody want to chime in with a response to, we've got 4 minutes left. I mean, this is such a robust platform that, and again, it still drops that audio down onto that layer because I just automatically dragged and dropped it over, but there's 2 different ways that you can actually add video to your timeline. Like I can double click on a video source over here and I can find a spot that I want where I want to add a piece and I can clip. These are your mark in, mark out points. So here's my mark in. I'm going to go find a mark out. Okay. So I like that. You know, Julie, what I would say you're thinking about is in an export, and I'm going to show you that real quick here in just a second. So I'm going to take this. So I've got this little clip. It's where her hands come up. Again, I'm dragging this so that I'm about the same in regard to her hands coming up. I'm using I just hit the C on my keyboard, which brings up the cut tool automatically, or the razor tool. So I know that that's where I want. Now, if I just grab the film, the little film icon and drag it down, see how it didn't bring that audio with it? And see how close that is now? Well, that is because remember, I created a 720 and we are actually in the clip is 1080. And see how, there we go. So you can see that piece there, but we go from boom to boom and then back, right? Okay. Now real quick, just to get to Julie, and I don't want to take any more of your day unless people want to stay on a little bit longer, and I'm fine with that. But to get this exported, so just a real quick export lesson, there's 2 different ways to export something. You can click File and then Export Media. So it's going to take everything from that first piece and export it for me. And it brings up this export settings. There's a whole different variety of ways to export. And these are all listed here. I could just export audio if I just wanted to export audio. What I typically do for digital website and online stuff is I'll click this H.264. I can either do match high bit rate, or you can open up this custom setting, this presets. And I can go here to YouTube, so I can export something to YouTube. And that takes care of all the settings for you, Julie. Or I can export a higher YouTube, 720, 1080. I mean, all of these things are not necessarily things that you need to worry about. But if you look for what you're looking for, let's say you want to go direct to Facebook, you can do Facebook 720p or 1080, right? Now, if you're editing in 720, you can't necessarily export to 1080. Now, if you're 1080, you can export to 720. But again, these just kind of give you a quick little way to export to certain platforms quickly and efficiently. So I'm going to be back, I think, next month with another basic so we can build on to what we did here. So I do invite you all to kind of keep an eye out for that. I'm also doing an After Effects basic training later on this month. So thank you all very much for being here. Please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like. I'm going to drop my email. There's my email in the chat. It's just elirigatuso@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Eli, middle initial R, Rigatuso, if you want to shoot me some questions as well. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I do hope that this helped make you feel a little bit more comfortable in regard to getting started with Premiere Pro. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Eli. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's my pleasure.
And of course, thank you guys for being here, and we hope to see you in the next session. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.